I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight. One of the things we try to do here at the Compact is make sure when we visit a city or a community that we highlight some of the great and terrific things the community has to offer. And he's going to talk to us, like in Detroit when we were there last spring, hear the terrific story about Cleveland and all the things, the kind of the arc of its success and the things that the city here has to offer. Baiju Shah is the president and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the region's leading economic development organization with over 12,000 members. The largest metropolitan chamber of commerce in the nation. That surprised me. That's really great. Guided by a board of corporate and entrepreneurial CEOs, the organization focuses on accelerating growth and prosperity through strategic initiatives, business services, real estate, and advocacy. I'm going to skip a couple things because you have a great vitae here. I'm not going to skip it all. I'm just going to, he serves on numerous civic boards, including as a trustee of Destination Cleveland, Global Cleveland, Team NEO, Ohio Excels, and the Ohio Business Roundtable. Previously, he served as director of Invacare and Athersys and an advisory board member of Citizens Financial Group. And he began his business career as a consultant with McKinsey & Company. He's been named an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year and recognized as one of Cleveland's most influential leaders. He received a JD from Harvard Law School and a BA from Yale University and is a native Ohioan. All right. So let's give a warm welcome.
All right. Thank you, Susan. You know, it's an honor to be here tonight to address this gathering of individuals that are committed to improving and strengthening our institutions of higher education. From the business community's perspective, the work you're doing is truly vital. It's vital to the individuals that these institutions serve. It's vital to our regions, our state, and indeed our world. Now, I want to compliment Chancellor Duffy. Chancellor Duffy invited me here to speak to all of you tonight, and then I saw the lineup that you guys have got over these couple of days. I know many of you, as Susan mentioned, were dazzled by my friend Craig Hassel today at Playhouse Square. How many of you went to Playhouse Square? Okay, good. Everyone went to Playhouse Square. Craig, spectacular. I think, Susan, you described him as effusive. He's got that compelling Australian accent. He draws you in, and then he dazzles you with all the chandeliers that are around, right? And then tomorrow morning, you've got our lieutenant governor, a former university president, a championship football coach in your lineup, and you do the afternoon with Superman and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? So for tonight, you get something completely different, right? You've got me, as you heard from Susan, a former consultant, and you've got slides, right? There you go. So I am a proud Clevelander. As Susan mentioned, I'm a native Clevelander, native Ohioan. I'll tell you a little bit about our organization. And as Susan mentioned, I want to tell you a little bit about the story, the arc of Cleveland. But I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit more about our organization. GCP is the region's Chamber of Commerce. It is the CEO leadership group. Our mission is to accelerate growth and prosperity. As Susan mentioned, our board is the CEOs of the largest organizations, largest institutions in our region. They come together, as many organizations do, in the regions and states that you represent, really to focus on that mission. We've got two wonderful individuals who know Susan well that we imported from Minnesota. One is the president of the Cleveland State University, Karen's here somewhere, Laura Bloomberg, and President Eric Kaler of Case Western Reserve University, who both are on my board, very active members of our organization. And it's really this community of business leaders and institutional leaders that come together to set a vision for where regions need to go, what the priorities are, and then use the platform of their personal leadership to really bring people together to see these priorities through. So tonight I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we are as a region, where we've come from, and where we're going, and also why the institutions that you're supporting are so vital to regions like Cleveland. And I'm going to start by just playing a little bit.
One of the top regions for college graduates.
Among the best cities for young professionals.
A top 10 city for new college graduates.
One of the best states to start a business.
one of America's hottest housing markets.
An excellent choice for Gen Z home buyers.
#1 in the U.S. for growth and home buying power. A city every art lover should visit.
One of America's top travel destinations.
Ranked among the world's best cities.
So yeah, this is Metropolis. But actually it's Cleveland, which coincidentally enough is the birthplace of Superman.
The new center of the world is Cleveland.
So those headlines are real news. It's not fake news. Those headlines are all from national media, all from the last year, and it's really evidence of the momentum we've got going on that hopefully you got a flavor of when you were visiting Playhouse Square today. Cleveland is indeed a region that's on the rise. It's a region whose companies are leading through innovation, making the things that matter. You're sitting here in the midst of the Cleveland Clinic. We're world-renowned for our healthcare. You've seen Playhouse Square, where we've got world-renowned arts and culture here. We've also got nationally recognized parks, a national park, and even a Great Lake. And what we've got here, I feel, and I'm a little bit biased, but hopefully by the time you're done visiting, but what I feel here is truly unmatched. It's enviable. I had the opportunity to host my peers from around the country here 6 months ago. And what they walked away with when they came here was they were just simply stunned. Every visitor sees it, and every newcomer like Craig Hassel treasures it. We're indeed, as a region, Cleveland, we're back. It's taken us decades of work and partnerships across the public and the private sector and the not-for-profit sector. It's about building companies and community, but we're indeed back. That resurgence is visible and it's palpable. And I want to give you two more examples of that. So from the headlines, I'm going to go to the skyline. This is Cleveland, and what it looked like when I was growing up in Cleveland. And this is the glow up that it looks like today. Sort of a shining beacon of the progress that we've made over the last couple of decades. And from the headlines and the skyline, the next thing I'll share with you is the stock line. So one of our advisors on our board took a look at all the publicly traded companies in Greater Cleveland. There's 33 of them that are publicly traded. These are examples. You'll know of some like the Sherwin-Williams and the Progressives. You probably will not have heard a lot of the others that are B2B types of companies. And that advisor, Cerity Partners, basically created what we call the Cleveland Index, because what we kept hearing from our CEOs is how well their companies were doing and how they were outperforming their peers, and their only issue was talent, talent, talent. So we created something called the Cleveland Index, and we used it to tell a story of how we're doing as businesses. And what they did is they tracked it back to 2010, and what you'll see on the chart here, they compared it to the S&P 500, the standard market index. And Cleveland companies have been outperforming. For 15 years, we've been outperforming, but in particularly over the last 5 years. It's both the public companies, but it's also the private businesses in this region. It's businesses, dynamic businesses that drive region. And what's driving this, as you can see on the bullet points, it's leadership, but it's about innovation. It's innovation using technology not only to operate more effectively, but innovation using technology to innovate, to create the products and the services that matter to consumers and businesses, not just here in the US, but around the world. Now, when you think of innovation in our region, or you think of innovation perhaps in any region, you go to sort of that hub of innovation, which is kind of where we're sitting right here, in the midst of the Cleveland Clinic and Case Western Reserve and university hospitals, Cleveland State, all of these institutions that are research institutions that are vital to a region. That's what people think about as innovation. Well, one of the challenges that we were presented by Eric Kaler, the president of Case Western, when he moved here several years ago, he goes, I want to know what's going on in R&D across this region. And I'm not just talking about the institutions, I want to talk about the companies. So we decided to do a little bit of a landscape with an external consultant. And what we found, which was an interesting discovery for all of us that have been involved in innovation, is that when you zoom out from University Circle where you're sitting, you see that there's this entire map of innovation that's going on, R&D facilities and companies and institutions across all of Greater Cleveland. And the surprising finding was that while the nucleus is here, where you're sitting, there's nearly $4 billion of R&D occurring across this region. most of it at corporates and some of it at NASA Glenn. Now you may be wondering, okay, what are they working on? What are all of these companies working on? And how do we start to do more of this and do more of it together? And I want to give you kind of one example to give you a visual picture of what our companies work on when they're not sitting just here thinking about our healthcare system. So I'm going to give you a picture, and I'm going to give you a moment. And I want you to think of a place that you affiliate with that photo, of that image. It's kind of an iconic image, of course, of an electric vehicle. I'm not a mentalist, but I'm guessing that some of you, maybe all of you, are thinking of a place that starts with the letter C, right? California, probably. China for some of you. So this is what we see when we see that car. We see Cleveland. Because every part of that vehicle has innovation that comes from companies that are sitting here in Cleveland, right? Whether it's the batteries, the power systems, the fluid systems, the brakes, the tires, the body, the paint, the charging infrastructure. As we like to say, all of that is driven by Cleveland innovation. And that rock isn't rolling without Cleveland on board. But it's more than just EVs, right? These companies that are in our midst, and my guess would be true, this is true in every region or state that you're coming from, are innovating in products and services across the board. So for those of you that are runners, you know the little bouncy shoes that we're all wearing as runners? That's Lubrizol, right? You come back from your run, you fire up the smoothie machine, the blender, the Vitamix, that's here, right? You make a mess on the floor, the Swiffer, it's not only marketed by P&G, it was invented up the hill here, right? If you have an app on your device called Libby where you're checking out books, that's Overdrive. Right? And if you go to sleep dreaming, as I do often, of going to outer space, the people that are creating the technologies that are going to enable humans to get to the moon and Mars is NASA Glenn. Those are just a few examples of what our region has been working on and continues to work on, and that's responsible for the revitalization. And innovation, we like to say here in Cleveland, it's in our DNA. For many of you, you saw kind of like some of the legacy of the Gilded Ages, where Cleveland was a center of the Industrial Revolution. Names like Rockefeller and Goodyear and Hanna and on and on and on. This was one of the center points of innovation that powered not only our community, but powered and transformed our world. It's innovation that is a trait that is being expressed widely once again. But it's a place that, you know, a trait that's actually been dormant that we've had to reawaken in our region, reawaken through intentional efforts over the last several decades. So I want to go back to this, right? This is the Cleveland that I grew up in. We went from being a center of innovation, a center of investment, a center of individuals that were creators, that were transforming sectors and transforming the world, to a region that was stagnating because we were stewards. We were stewards of the riches that had been given to us in the form of companies or institutions, and we had stopped investing in those in innovation. And it was in 1981 that we hit probably in our region our low point. We had this foolish mayor, a gentleman you'll know by the name of Dennis Kucinich, terrible mayor, terrible congressman, who led this community into a default. Kind of like the Detroit story, but probably even worse because he didn't have to do it, but he decided to do it just to be stubborn. But it was at that moment that the community's business community was reawakened. And they realized that if they didn't get re-engaged, that stagnation was going to lead to decline. And that they had to get involved, they had to shape a vision for the region, re-engage with the public sector to change the trajectory from stagnation and decline to stability and eventually growth. They created an organization that today we call the Greater Cleveland Partnership. that identified priority initiatives and then pursued them in public-private partnerships, something that we talk about everywhere. But public-private partnerships back then that were focused on innovation and investment, creating the first venture capital firms that we had, focused on talent and workforce and development. And they worked these partnerships over time. So things that you're going to see in our community, the Rock Hall tomorrow was one of those early initiatives to go and secure that asset, to transform the lakefront, the North Coast Harbor that you'll see where the Rock Hall is. The ballpark in Arena that we go to games and celebrate tonight. The Cavs are playing the 76ers down there, was an initiative. And of course, Playhouse Square, saved from the wrecking ball by a set of concerned citizens and business leaders partnering with the public sector and starting to restore these incredible jewels back to the glory. It was in the 90s that we got recognized for all of that public-private partnership. Cleveland was starting to be hailed. HBS and others called us the comeback city. And that was, validating for everyone that was involved. But by the year 2000, we recognized that even with everything that we had been accomplishing, our fundamental economic base was still fragile and eroding. And that was because of bigger forces. If you think about the 1980s and 1990s, globalization, completely transforming industries and where industries could do business. Technology, transforming how to do business, transforming in particular the manufacturing environments. And so we started to recognize that in spite of everything we had been doing for 20 years, we had what our newspaper at the time called the quiet crisis, that there was this slow leakage in our economy, this transition that had been occurring because we weren't spending enough time investing in innovation, investing in new economic sectors. And so in the year 2000, we took on a new set of initiatives. We continued to do everything we did, but we did recognize we needed to invest even more in innovation and economic growth, especially in sectors that were going to become even more relevant in the 21st century. It was then that we brought together this institution, the Cleveland Clinic, Case Western Reserve, University Hospitals, to really concentrate their capabilities around growing a med tech and life sciences environment around these institutions. We also created broader plays in the IT space and fintech, places that had been growing certainly in the 90s. We weren't participating in the way we should have been, given our region, so we put more focus there. And the state of Ohio started something called the Third Frontier Program. For those of you that are in the legislature, you know it very well. It was the state's efforts to create that next horizon of economic activity, not just in regions like Cleveland, but really across the state. The results, a much more diversified and knowledge-intensive economy, the innovation-driven leadership across many different industries, and at the same time, we continued the work we had to continue around talent, and we continued the work we had to continue around downtown. So that was around convention centers and hotels. We started to convert downtown from a daytime district to a residential district. We went from 4,000 people living downtown to today about 21,000 living downtown. We've now got 3 doggy daycares downtown, right? And we expanded that beyond downtown to neighboring areas, the Ohio City and Tremont area on the near west side and Detroit Shoreways we talked about, as well as on the east side down here in University Circle, all to reinvest in the city, to create a place where people wanted to be and where businesses wanted to invest. We hit a moment in 2016. 2016 in our region was a championship year. Right? All eyes were on Cleveland. We hosted the Republican National Convention here. We had the World Series. You must be from Illinois. The World Series was going great until an act of God stopped Game 7. Right? And we had the basketball championship, right? Where for the first time in a long time, Cleveland was able to hoist a championship trophy. some of the greatest days that we had. All in was the theme of the basketball team that year. All in was their motto. It was sort of their mindset, their mantra, as a team, as an organization, and it became the mantra of our community. And one of the greatest moments, two of the greatest moments, I would say, from 2016 for me as a Cavs fan. The first was at the national anthem. Instead of bringing in a headline performer, they would simply sing one note and turn the microphone to the crowd. And they'd have 20,000 people singing in unison the national anthem. And that was sort of like reflective of the theme. And the second was this great day where 1.3 million Clevelanders came together to celebrate the championship peacefully downtown. Just a spectacular day of celebration for our region. Now that would be a pretty good place to end the story. Right? Fairly dramatic in terms of what we've come, but what we have not forgotten is to be a great region and to remain a great region, you've got to continue to invest and reinvest and reinvent. Right? Dynamic regions and great regions always continue to invest in innovation, invest in people, and invest in place. So 3 years ago, we launched in our region something called the All-In Plan. And it's our vision for this decade and where we're headed towards being truly a great region on a great lake. The plan targets for us to be one of the top growth regions in the Midwest this decade. Tops in business growth, income growth, and jobs growth. And we're well on our way to get there. And most important, as a part of that plan, you'll see the echo of the theme. Because the only way we know that we're going to get there is if we truly operate with that same mindset that powered us in 2016, that we were all in our mindset, all in our spirit, and all in with 7 values that define when we are at our best. For those of you from Columbus, you'll recognize this as the Columbus way. We use a similar set of words to describe ours. It always starts with being inspired, setting bold and ambitious visions and the plans to execute, and it always ends with being in unity, not caring who leads, who supports, or who gets any credit. It's always in unity for our community. So thanks to the leadership of our public and private sector, I'll give you a glimpse into sort of what we've been up to. So I'm going to go back to this map. Right? A part of what Eric wanted us to do in highlighting all this research that was going on around the region was to create a map with dots that we now need to connect, because we know there's power when innovators and creators come together. And so we've been working hard to bring our institutions and our industry together around productive innovation alliances. This is critical to make sure that the innovation that's occurring inside of the laboratories of a Cleveland State or a Case Western become products that can quickly change sectors in the world. And we've been quite successful recently in being awarded a tech hub. Many of you have got tech hubs in your region. We're a finalist for a big award called an NSF Engine, which is another industry institutional collaboration. Both of those around materials and manufacturing sciences. And also we've had significant investments right here in healthcare around something we call the Innovation District. What's exciting is this is also leading companies to invest more in their own R&D sectors. So it's not just what happens at the institutions, it's Sherwin-Williams opening up a global R&D center. It's Avery Dennison moving their North American headquarters from California to Cleveland, and many others choosing to invest in expanding their R&D enterprises because they see where the region is heading and the opportunity to succeed more as companies by working together. We're also taking that forward to NASA. We are privileged to have one of only 9 NASA centers in the United States, and probably the leading center for NASA's R&D. So we don't launch rockets out of Cleveland, and we don't land planes in Cleveland. But all of the technologies for every single NASA mission are innovated on by over 3,000 scientists that sit behind the gates of a facility that you can see when you take off and land from Cleveland. What you can't see is that there's 300 buildings behind those gates and another 6,400 acres just west of here in Sandusky. We've been excited that recently, in a full team effort, again, in an all-in effort led by our governor and our senators and our federal delegation, we've been able to secure more responsibilities for NASA, specifically related to nuclear energy development. So one of the cool things about NASA is they work on everything. The things that they work on blow your mind. What they're trying to work on in nuclear energy is not to help rockets go into space, it's to establish bases on the dark side of the moon. Because when you get to the dark side, you can't use the sun to power yourself. And so they're trying to figure out, well, how are we going to have power on the other side of the moon? And their thought is it's going to be nuclear. But you got to create nuclear that you can send up in a rocket and kind of assemble with just a team of 3 to 5 people. And then you got to have that plant produce. And it's got to power everything that's going to be on that side. And when we think about that, that's a very cool technical challenge, but that has enormous application here on Earth. We talk about the energy challenges and the need for more generation, the more distributed generation. Well, this is super small nuclear power. Right? Nuclear power, they can power a factory, not just power, an entire region. So those are 2 things that we are working on in terms of continuing to scale innovation in our region. But the second big challenge that we now have as a region is that our businesses are growing faster than our talent. We are, like many regions across probably, I would guess, these 12 states, most of our 12 states, we're kind of in a flat demographic situation. Right? So businesses are growing. We're not growing our population. We've got a massive challenge to continue their growth right now by attracting more individuals in. So set of initiatives that we've started to focus on is how do we both retain more young professionals here and attract more young professionals here. And we've zeroed in first and foremost on individuals that are currently in higher ed institutions, right? 2- and 4-year colleges. What we've realized is that if we give them a work experience while they're getting their education, not only is it great for the student, but the student gets exposed to a potential employer. But even more important than getting that together, the complement to that, what we realize is that these 20-year-olds have choices. They can take their degrees, and they can go anywhere in the country or world because of the talent challenge that everyone's facing. So we had to realize that we need to also show them what living here looks like as a 20-year-old. Now, being the father of 2 20-year-olds, I know that that's not through my eyes, right? Parents don't persuade kids. Peers persuade peers. And so we created something here called Summer in the Land. And it started really just as an experiment in the business community to say, let's bring all of our interns together, right? No matter if you're a large company like Sherwin-Williams or the Cleveland Clinic or a small manufacturing company, let's just see how many interns we've got. And let's let them connect with each other and get to explore Cleveland together. We ran our 3rd summer this summer. We had 1,800 interns together. They came from 210 different institutions across the country and 470 different companies. And we think we're still only getting about 1/3 of our interns to show up because I cannot get kids out of these institutions like the clinic in Case Western to get out of the labs and come downtown to socialize. Right? But what's been great about this is this has become a way for all of these students not only to meet each other and get connected to each other, they just have a lot more fun in the summer, and by the end of the summer, they're much more inclined to take a job offer from an employer that's offering them a job offer. And we complemented that with something here at the bottom right. We do winter career expos because we've got kids that obviously go to schools outside of greater Cleveland, so we do a lot of things in the fall with the likes of Cleveland State and Case Western, with our College Fest, where we have a bunch of employers together talking about summer jobs and permanent jobs. And in the winter, we always do something right before the holidays for the kids who go to school outside the region. Same type of thing, a big fair for them to see each other. The thing that we just launched about 2 weeks ago is something we borrowed from anyone here from Indiana? No, Indiana. Oh, Indiana. One Indiana. Oh, there. So there's a program that our partners in Indiana started called Ascend Indiana. And it's what I would call a private LinkedIn for students that are interested in positions in your region to connect with employers that are interested in students. Because the traditional things, every one of your higher ed institutions is signed up for something called Handshake. And I will tell you, Handshake is crap. It is absolute crap, right? Employers hate it because they get flooded with a bunch of individuals that have no interest in their company or their geography. Students hate it because no one ever calls them back, right? But it's the monopoly that exists. And so the folks in Indiana created their version of a private version of this, and you got to opt in as students and you got to opt in as employers, and it's called Ascend Indiana. It includes some career counseling. And we basically picked that up and we brought it here. And we created our own version of that so that students and employers can find each other. And this is particularly helpful for smaller employers because everybody knows a Sherwin-Williams, everybody knows a Cleveland Clinic. If you're at a job fair, you're going to the brands that you know, right? Nobody knows the small manufacturing company, the small financial services company, the small IT company that has no brand, that has probably equally great career opportunities and maybe even greater career opportunities because in smaller enterprises, you have to learn faster and you get to just do more. And this gives them an opportunity, a two-way opportunity. So employers can directly market to students that they know are actually interested in Cleveland. They can say, Mike, I know that you are interested in financial services opportunities. I'm running a small wealth management firm. We're looking for summer interns, right? So those are two things that we're up to in terms of innovation and talent, but we haven't forgotten that we got to keep investing in place as well. And we're in, as one of our CEOs called it recently, a golden era of opportunity. And it's a golden era driven based on decades, again, of investment that are now creating greater and greater opportunities. So just to walk you around the pretty visuals here, Sherwin-Williams has just opened their brand new headquarters that you can see downtown. We're reconnecting our downtown to our lakefront. That will be a multi-billion-dollar project, and we're shutting down the lakefront airport. For those of you from Illinois, we wish we had Mayor Daley. We wish we had the bulldozer, but we're going to try the FAA route first. Top right, Dan Gilbert, who you heard a lot about, I'm sure, in Detroit when you were there last year. Luckily, Dan's second hometown is Cleveland, and they're doing a $3.5 billion project to restore our riverfronts with parklands and all sorts of development. We've just redone our ballpark. We're about to embark on a $2.5 billion domed football stadium based on US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, and a $2 billion airport renovation. It's $10 billion of construction going into placemaking, and none of that includes the nearly $5 billion that's going on right around us here in the health organizations. So, as a region, from the headlines to the skylines to the stock lines, the momentum is absolutely clear. Cleveland has always been a place where the world looks for what's next. And this is our moment to do that once again. We're powering innovation, and we're making the things that matter. And we're recognizing that we're once again a region of leaders and a region of winners. We've got companies that are leading their sectors nationally and globally. Our health institutions are world-renowned. Our arts and cultural community are also world-class. We've got professional sports teams that compete at the very highest levels of their sport and win. We've got a national park and nationally recognized parks and a Great Lakes. We are indeed a great region on a Great Lake, a region that's not only a place where we're proud to be from, but increasingly a place where people from Minnesota and others want to come to work, to prosper, to engage, to belong, and to live better lives. Thank you. That's it.